I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to see all of you here as well. And this is actually my first Sociocracy for All conference. So this is a new experience for me as well. I will share my screen. And I will try to remove some stuff from my screen. I will speak about if we can combine Sociocracy and Scrum, or Agile way of working in a good way. This little tealish hummingbird is my new companion for that moment. So I don't have a name for him or her yet. So I have to think about that. Otherwise, I said, I'm Rolf from Medina. I'm from a company called Future Organizing from Sweden. Our aim, or our purpose, is to connect research with practical reality, meaning that we want to take research into how can we use it, how can we use things from the real life, as I said, to also to make research more fruitful for business. I'm mainly working for a company called Future Organizing. I will come back to that in a couple of minutes, and also start up a company called Highly Engaged People that's more working with competence management and how to manage competency in knowledge-intensive organizations. Have been working for many years as a consultant, more than 20 years actually. Have some books, doing a lot of research, speaks at different events. I've tried to combine my business life with academic life. I maybe spent 20–30% of my time in academia. So I work at Umeå University in the north of Sweden. I work with UCL in London, and also with Schema in Lille and Paris in France, doing research, teaching, supervising. I think supervising has been one of my favorite things, because to listen, to support the young people that are growing, they add so much information to myself. I'm an engineer from the beginning, many years ago. So with an engineer and research brain, I love facts. So I want to see a lot of nice things and get evidence in that. Future Organizing, Alice and I, Alice is my wife, my best friend, my companion. We have spent 26 years together. We wrote a book, first in Sweden, 2021, we released it, and now it will be in English from hopefully next week or maybe the week after, called Teal Trust Transparency. This is based on a long research project for more than 3 years that we have studied more than 100 organizations, talked to 350 different people in the world about how can we move into a new way of organized work and other things. We concluded with what we call the DP model. The DP stands for the distributed power. How can we distribute the power in our organizations down to the people who are doing the real work? And where we also studied sociocracy. So we have, in the book, we have what we call 12 voice from the field, people that knows a bit more or more some kind of experts. And we have about leadership. I think it is about leadership. We have Ted Rowell as a voice from the field as well. What I am going to talk about today is actually described a bit in the book, and the embryo at least of it. It what I will talk about today. I will also say that the DP model will also take a systemic view of an organization. It can also be seen like a continuation of what Frederick Laloux's Reinvent an Organization, how to really implement new things about self-organized. But today I want to see how it's possible to combine sociocracy and Scrum. I'm coming from the Agile way of working. I've been working with system development for many years before. I've been working with digital journeys. I'm teaching in Agile way, Agile development, Scrum, Kanban, etc. And now we're moving into what about how can we now add something on top on those things that could be made like a governance system. And you look at those two pictures here, we can see that they are, if you look at Scrum, I will go into the more in deep in a couple of minutes, is a production-oriented way of working based on an agile, self-organized mindset and culture. And then we have the sociocracy way of being a dynamic way of organize our work. How can we do it? How can we combine those two? If you look at Scrum, what is Scrum? Originally, it's coming from lean production. That's the reason that there's a lot of words that is the same. It's very production-oriented, coming from the system development from the beginning, but you can use it a lot for products. You can do different things. It's based on a product backlog. It's a long-term list of things that we're going to do. It's refined into a sprint backlog. It's what we are going to do the next couple of weeks. A sprint is an iteration, time-boxed, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. What we're going to do that in that time. We have a daily scrum or a daily stand-up where we have every day talk about what we're going to do today. Do we have any problems? Do we have any issues? Can we support each other? When the sprint is ready, review it, what you have delivered in these 2 weeks, for instance, and also have retrospective. What can we do better? What can we have to stop doing? What can we improve? So this is like a very production-oriented way of working, but based on a self-organized mindset. We're using Kanban boards to see what we're going to do, what are we doing, what is done. We have what we call in Scrum artifacts, ceremonies, and roles. The artifacts is like the product backlog, the sprint backlog, and maybe the roadmap, long-term perspective. Like the ceremonies that we can plan the sprint. We can also have, what I said before, the sprint review. What is outcome of what we have done during this iteration? We do a retrospective. We can do, I've been working so much with competence and learning. I love reflection and retrospective, looking back, what can we do in the future to improve? We have the daily stand-ups. The nice thing with Scrum as such, you have very few roles. This is one of the things that we have also seen when we are looking into new ways of organizing work, that we need to have very few roles. We need to focus on competence, what people knows, what they can do. Roles can be very limiting. The role, we are always trying to just do what is described in our role description. So the nice thing with Scrum that there are very few roles. You can be a team member, You have a Scrum Master that is, from a leadership perspective, called a servant leader. The role of the Scrum Master is to manage the process, to protect the team, etc. And then we have the product owner that owns the backlog. And there is a distance between the team and the product owner because the product owner is somewhere outside the team, so it's not a part of the team. So it works, and you can develop software. We have supported an organization in Uruguay, for instance, that implemented Scrum for developing trainings or documentations. So we can do it it's very good for product development or for productions. But what are the challenges with Scrum? One of the main challenges is how to scale it. I've been working with many big companies. The last couple of years ago, I worked with the digital journeys with IKEA here in Sweden, and you can see that already these digital teams, the Scrum teams, they have different goals. They have different product owners with different goals. They have backlogs that were prioritized in different ways. So when we are trying to develop a more like a system or a bigger product, you can have different kind of goal misalignments. Those short sprints, and that is time boxing, that you put everything into a time box that say, okay, 2 weeks, we're going to do this. This counteracts innovation. You're focusing on to produce things in a short period of time. I talked to a guy a couple of years ago. He said that, I don't know what, now we're starting to use Scrum, and now I cannot, before every Monday I was trying to experiment and looking at YouTube and learn new stuff. I cannot do it anymore because I have to manage my activities. So that is a counteracts to innovation if you're not doing it in a good way. There is a tendency to build very rigid structures with a high team loyalty. A person belongs to one team, and the loyalty to the team is, in many cases, very, very, very high. That is also counteracting innovation because you're building very homogeneous teams. This Agile way of working is in the beginning very mindset of being very self-organized, or a culture of self-organizing. But what we can see today that they are using Scrum as a kind of development methodology, but still in organization that are really traditional. They are hierarchical in terms of power and authority. You're trying to squeeze it in instead of using the full potential of Scrum, being self-organized, being agile. When we're trying to scale Scrum, with scale I mean that have dependencies between many Scrum teams. The most of those ways to scale it is based on introducing new roles. We have something called Scrum of Scrum. Then you are introducing a chief product owner, a layer above the normal product owner. So you're building even more hierarchies, more control. And then there are some attempts. There is some a framework, governance framework called SAFE, Scale Agile Framework it stands for, is really command and control way of doing, to have even more control of all the Scrum teams to try to solve this problem with scaling. The funny thing is that Agile Manifesto was written by 17 men 20 years ago, no women. They have this way how to develop new software, and I have studied what they are been writing about SAFE as such, and they are also saying this is really command and control, really trying to control the way of these teams, and not a good way to move forward. We have tried to make Agile team-based organization. I borrowed this picture from a guy I know in Sweden, Jimmy Jandén, is like an Agile evangelist. And we are doing from a top-down hierarchical organizations in most way. We are trying to do it more agile, but we are still trapped in this one arrow from the top to the down. So we are not solving the way of to have those in the bottom of the pyramid working in a real self-organized agile way of working. So we need a real agility. So there is a need for a governance system based on self-organization, organizing principles to scale Scrum. So there we started. How can we do that in a better way? And of course, why not sociocracy? There is benefits, there is similarities. So we have tested that in a small scales, in some kind of organizations, with a couple of Scrum teams. Some pieces of it we have tested in large organizations, and we started to do a mapping. In the sociocracy left side, I have put in what some kind of roles that it is standard that many voices, one song book. He has to have something to lean on, and map it into the Scrum. If you look into the leader in a sociocracy circle, could be very similar to a product owner. The only difference is that product owner in Scrum is to have a distance, it's not a part of the team. Also, the Scrum Master can, in some cases, take a part of this tasks. A facilitator in the circle is a typical Scrum Master activity in Scrum, to facilitate meetings, facilitate the decision-making process, secure activity, anything is falling outside. Scrum Master is also taking care of documentations, even if from a Scrum perspective, you shall not document so much. However, we need to do something about that. Delegates you don't have in Scrum because it's still a top-down way of working. But it should be easy to implement a delegate selected by the team. And the circular team is more or less the same thing. So this is why when we started with how can we map those two things together. This is just an example of how can it look like. We're going to real agility. Scrum can be used as a way of making things. The process, how to work in the circles. If you have the double linking, we can have all the meetings. We can have, for instance, the sprint planning activity that we're doing every second week. If we have 2 weeks sprints in the circle, we can use consent as the decision-making method. Dependencies can be managed in the parent circle. We can create temporary circles when needed. That is really difficult in traditional organizations. That is very rigid, very well structured. In this way, we can also add, if you need technical support, circles, whatever. If you need a temporary team to support some Scrum teams, we can do that. That's a flexibility. So what can we gain? We can have a self-organized governance system to manage many Scrum teams. We can scale Scrum without implementing command and control. So this is what we can really achieve. We can have a natural agile mindset again. With Sociocracy, we will have structure and practices that goes beyond the current artifacts and ceremonies. That is what's missing in working with Scrums, especially in larger organizations. So we have all the structures, we have the practices, we have the processes that we can use. We have the flexibility to start all those temporary teams when needed. So this is, in what I've seen in many organizations, really difficult to do. People can work in several teams. I was in a discussion with an Agile coach last week, I think it was. I said, this is very good. Now, if we're doing this, we can have people that works in different teams, circles, whatever. And she asked me, is that good? Shall we not belong to one team always? I said, no, we shall not focus on that. We should focus on what people know, the competence, where can they add value. We can do consent for non-operational decisions as a practice. So this is things that we can gain, we can add to Scrum from using Sociocracy. We can switch on the other way around. Backlog as a tool is fantastic, and I think I can assume that there's many Sociocratic organizations that are already using backlogs, but I think that's a really good thing that is easy to implement. Retrospectives that we can learn from Scrum to add that. We've seen that also when we tested that in organizations that not been working retrospective meetings, they have gained a lot of things, because then you reflect how you're doing, how you're working, and how can we improve. We can also use other Agile methods as a Kanban, if we go into that, to minimize work in progress. And a lot of other things. I'm not going deep into Sociocracy, what it can gain from Scrum, because we are at the Sociocracy conference. So I assume most of you are very deep into Sociocracy. What we have seen, we have some pitfalls and challenges. Consent. In our DP model, decision making is one of the areas that we are going into, and that is something that is really is one of the things that when we are trying to move organizations forward, in many cases we are starting with decision making. How do we make decisions? There is especially here in Sweden, there's a tendency to use consensus as a decision making method, and we have talked to so many organizations, they don't know how they are making decisions, and then going from consensus to consent could be a bit tough. Because you're moving into this, that I can think my feelings like this, and so that is one of the challenges we have seen so far. Traditional organization move to self-organizing. That is something that I can speak about for hours. Many traditional organizations it's not easy for them to go into a self-organized way of working. There is so much things that you have to consider. My next step, what I started to do now, is to challenge the Scrum Master role. I said before, it's a servant leadership role, trying to protect the team, focus on the team. Do we really need it when we're going to self-organizing? The tasks, there are always tasks that we have to manage, but that can be shared in the team. So if we can take away one more role, it would be really, really great. Yeah, taking on different roles in different teams. It's not easy if you are been working with Scrum before and you're always working in the same team with this high loyalty, that maybe you can be suddenly be in different teams or circles. The product owner, there is, in traditional organizations, there is a distance from product owner to the team, and then suddenly we say, okay, you have to be a part of this team, you have to be one equal team member, and this is not always easy for a product owner to find this space, so to say. What we have seen so far is advantages. It's easier to have common view and goals. We can speak about domains, what is area of responsibilities, moving from the team focus to what we are going to deliver instead. We have seen that alignment between different teams and these backlogs has improved. They are not living their own life so anymore. It's easier to, the double linking also improve, that we have maybe more people with deeper knowledge meeting each other to sort out any misunderstandings or disalignments. So it's easier to understand and handle all those dependencies. It's a big flexibility to start new teams and collaborate together. People have more interaction with each other. Advice process, I know this Sociocracy advice process, but I think this is really good that we can use this as much as possible to gather new knowledge from other people that is also have deep knowledge in the area. Transparency has increased, using tools that we really can share, backlogs, prioritizations, that we also can improve in that. And then many people that have been working with Scrum or other this kind of methodologies are a bit religious. They have to follow the process instead of say, when can we skip the process? When can we skip the methodology? And maybe also start up a circle where we are starting to test new things, experiment, learning. So we have this the flexibility will give the possibility to leave the standard processes. So those are some of the advantages we have seen so far in using this. The Agile manifesto was written by 17 men 20 years ago. We instead, together, one woman, one man, started looking into the Teal manifesto. I don't go into the details, we can share the presentations later. And I think I have been speaking now for 35 minutes, so we have 10 minutes left, right? For discussions. If you want to more about this, you can always look into the book that will be released on Amazon next week or the week after, Teal Trust and Transparency, where I'm going into the deeper into self-organizing, looking into many cases that we have studied, and also looking into different kind of methodologies and way of working. But I will stop sharing. Questions? Reflections?
Thank you, Rolf. We have a couple questions that have accumulated in the chat. One was Sheila asked quite a while ago in the chat, what is the difference between spring review and sprint retrospective?
A sprint review is when you're looking at the outcome of you have delivered during the sprint, some kind of review of the outcome. The retrospective, you are looking into how have we been working during the sprint? Is it something that we need to stop doing, or start doing, or something we need to change? So it's like a reflection of the work process, and the review is on the outcome what we have done during the sprint.
Okay. And also, someone asked, SAFE, etc., is for companies with many teams working on the same project. How do you scale for agencies, many teams working on their own project?
Exactly. SAFE is for many teams working on the same product. That is true. Especially big systems, software. If you have many teams working on their own projects, you should also, how do we structure work? We have to structure it about products, business, something, how we are structuring the work, and then we have to build the organization around that. So if you have an agency working on their own project with many teams, maybe they can organize around business, market, whatever, and try to connect it there. So you also, but then you to back to sociocracy, what are our domain that we are working in? If that is a good answer on the question.
Yeah, thank you. Jan or Jan?
Yeah, thanks, Teal. So yeah, really liked that. Thanks. I think the thing that I found most helpful was the table where you mapped the roles. I've worked in a Scrum environment. I've worked in a Sociocratic environment, but it's never occurred to me that there's so many similarities. So thanks for that. But my question is, what do you think Sociocracy has like any advantages over Scrum with some of the limitations? You said that the Scrum has some limitations, like the 2 weekly review can stifle creativity and things like that. Do you think there's anything that could be gained from Sociocracy to kind of that might help with some of that, remove some of the rigidity?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's the flexibility we have. There's a couple of things you can do. You allow people to work in different teams. You can choose to be in different teams. That makes flexibility and such. And then you can also have the flexibility to, if you need to start, you have an issue that maybe need to be solved, but you cannot solve it in your team. You can see the other team, yeah, we can start a temporary team that focus on that. So there is all those kind of things will move away from the rigidity. And also what I said in the end, that maybe if we have something that we need to look into in deeper, maybe we can say that we leave Scrum. We don't need to have Scrum. We can go into Kanban instead. Kanban don't have time boxing. It's more flexible. We focus in on work in progress and focusing to finalize things and focus on that action.
Yes, that was my first impression when I saw the table. It was just like, ah, it's so similar. Maybe we could just do away with Scrum.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Now they were really similar. There is very few roles in both Sociocracy and Scrum actually, so you map them. And maybe also move away from roles and focus on tasks. What are we going to do? What do we really need? What are we really need to do? That's the reason that I also say I can challenge the Scrum Master role, because do we really need a person called Scrum Master, or a activities tasks that can be managed in the team if we are in an environment where we are feeling safe, we have the psychological safety, that we don't need have someone that can need to protect us. Or yeah, you know what I mean. The team is managing the work.
That'd be a good shift. Thank you. I don't want to take up anyone else's time.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question. Sheila has asked, how much training do the teams get in consent decision making?
That's a really good question. You need to have several locations. You need to have someone helping them in the beginning to understand consent, especially if you're coming for consensus decision making, because it's easy that the first question, isn't that consensus? No, it's not consensus, it's consent. It's the other way around. You have to think differently. So that takes time. We are so used to, especially in Sweden, to work with consensus. I can have an opinion. So you need to have training in that. And I think, yeah, in general, I've seen that decision making is difficult in general. When I'm asking companies, how do you make decisions? I got so many answers, different answers. And then the next question is, how do you manage operational decisions, tactical development decisions, and strategic decisions? What kind of methods do you have? And I don't know. So you have to train in the method, and you have to follow it up, and also onboarding a new people. Then you have to introduce them in the same way of thinking.
If you have questions, feel free to raise your hand or just speak up, or drop a question in the chat. There was a question earlier, Rolf, about getting the slides, if it's possible to get access to the slides that you've.
Absolutely. I can share it with someone.
Okay. So if you wish to reach out to Rolf to get the slides, you can do so. Sheila, go ahead.
Yeah, I have another question. Are you the one who is giving them the training in consent decision making? I guess you and your wife, you're working together. I'm not sure.
Yeah, yes, we are working together. We can do it, and other ways we have someone else that can do the training as well. But we have done it in some cases, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. I guess I'm curious how common sociocracy is right now in Sweden, like in general, throughout the country.
It's not that common, actually. It's very few organizations in Sweden. I think it's more common in Denmark, actually. But we have a few organizations, but it's not so common. expect from Andreas Jonsson, who is presenting here as well, I think, from Holma.
Any other questions? Feel free to raise your hand or drop a question in the chat. Seeing a question. Compensation question. It is easy to strike for higher pay if nobody wants to do the work of a particular team. For example, difficult client, nothing morally difficult. How to handle situations where nobody wants to wash the dishes.
Yes, that's a good question. This is about culture. One of the areas that we're describing in our book is the salary model and the profit sharing. So that is another discussion. This is a part of moving to the self-organizing way of working. You have to work with that. You have to work with the mindset, the culture. How do we really share things? How do we support each other? So this is a culture journey. That's a fantastic question.
Yes, go ahead, Khan.
Thank you. Core from Denmark, just across the pond.
Yeah.
I have been explained the difference between governance tools like Sociocracy and tools like Scrum or other Agile approaches as the difference between governance and workflow.
Yeah.
If you agree with that, like where does the line, where do you draw the line between that? Do they go over each other's domain, or can we have a fine line that is easy to explain for people why it makes sense to integrate those? Thank you.
I see Sociocracy as like the governance system above Scrum as a methodology to produce things in the producing circles. If I'm going to do that, where do we produce things? We do it. If we go to an hierarchy, we are doing in the bottom. Right, in Sociocracy, you're doing in the outer circles. There we are using Scrum as the way of working to produce products, systems, solutions, documentation, whatever. So I can see Sociocracy as the governance systems that is above. That is instead of strange things like safe, Scrum for Scrum, etc. So there is a fine line, and there is also and then you have, of course, you have overlapping, like in a Sociocratic circle, you can have different roles, you have different procedures that you have to combine with the Scrum way of working as well. But then there you have to be pragmatic, so to say. I'm very pragmatic in my way of thinking.
Thank you.
All right, so I realized that this doesn't go till 12:30. We're 4 minutes over already. So thanks for the extra time, Rolf. Thanks for all the questions, everybody. Thanks for being here. Rolf said that he would share the slides. So you can email him, I assume, Rolf, that works. if you want to get the slides.
Absolutely.
Any closing comments, Rolf?
No, I'm happy to be able to be here and talk to you. And I love all the questions. I love dialogue. So I think that is fantastic. So thank you for participating. And thank you for hosting.
Yeah, thanks, Rolf, so much for your expertise on this. Super interesting. Thanks everybody for coming.
Yeah.
Have a great rest of the day.